Hi, I'm Emily Hargrove and welcome to Prime. How would you like to see Dallas to a child's eyes? Well, that is exactly what you can do at the Dallas Center for Architecture. We have Greg Brown, the program director, here to tell us all about this amazing exhibit. Greg?
Hello.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
This is very exciting because I'm surrounded by toys and it's taking me back to my childhood, and it just looks glorious. So tell us, how did this idea come about?
Well, the Philadelphia Center for Architecture does something very similar, and we've seen what they've done for the last couple of years and said, you know, it's time to do this in Dallas. So we've added a little bit of a twist, and we've added toy buildings in addition to building toys. So we have some doll houses, but you know, it's a great timeline of toys. You know, whether you're 5 or 75, people come through and look at them and say, oh, I had that and I had that. And, you know, Lincoln Logs, we have 3 different sets up. And so the set I played with may not be the same set that someone else played with, but it's really been fascinating to see everybody's reactions.
Well, that's what's so lovely, is you say it can be from, you know, 5 to 75.
Right. We start with the earliest toys from 1900 around, a set of anchor blocks from Germany, which are little stone blocks. And then we go all the way to today, something like nano blocks or dado cubes or something like that.
And so how have you found that the styles have changed over the years?
One of the things is materials.
More plastic now?
Yeah, a little more plastic. You know, you still have wooden blocks, and they're still modern made wooden blocks, but those are really the early things that you see first. Then you get into wood that's not quite blocks, so you have Lincoln Logs and those kind of things. And then around the 1950s or 60s, you start to see plastic come in, and you also see the toys change as sort of the building materials change. So we think about Lincoln Logs and you build sort of a rustic cabin.
Right.
Well, what do you do when you're building a 1950s skyscraper? You have, you know, plastic girders and little window panels that go on the front. So
well, of course
it's evolved. Yeah, exactly.
Because
exactly.
I built 1950 skyscrapers the whole time.
Well, it's interesting. I didn't know about these sets until we started doing this research, but girder and panel building sets, and they come around in the 1950s, and part of it is because the toy manufacturer, the president of the company, is watching a building being built in Cincinnati. And he says, we've got to catch up. Look at this. There's still girders and sort of wall panels going on. We need to have a toy that does the same thing. So they built a skyscraper kit. Then there was a little home kit with swimming pools and things you can put in your backyard.
Cool.
And then a bridge and turnpike set. So you could create, you know, bridges and sort of the way highways come together.
That is very cool.
It's very interesting.
And you know, and looking at this, I mean, this erector set right here, it just looks so beautiful. And you said it was the 40s or 50s.
40s or 50s probably. They still make them. We have one that's earlier in the show and several that are later. So you start out with these metal boxes. It ends up being a plastic box later with some plastic pieces. But you know, these great metal things that you screw together. This was a motorized set, so you had a little motor that you could move things with. There's the wrench that you use to put the bolts.
That is, you see, but the fact that this is over 60 years old and it's such good quality.
Yeah, absolutely. They were made to last. They really were.
They were, and then we go on. Obviously, we've got the Taj Mahal right here.
And that one will make you go blind when you're putting it together. Those are little tiny pieces.
That is. And how did you? So who put this together?
We do walking tours at the center, and so we've got a great group of walking tour guides, and they came up for a couple of evenings and helped me put those together. You know, kits like this, and then Lego has these architecture sets now that they do. So, you know, you can still build Legos, but one of the things that I think is interesting is they've gotten into more sort of the pre-planned things.
Right.
So you buy Pirates of the Caribbean or Star Wars. These are great architectural icons. You have Empire State Building, the Farnsworth House outside Chicago.
Yeah, I mean,
the White House, falling water, those kind of things.
This is, I mean, that's very cool. That's for
that's the adult toy right
parents,
there. Exactly.
Isn't it? Right. The kids are wanting to build huge towers. No, I'd like you to build mid-century modern, please.
Yeah, could I have a Mies house, please?
Yes,
exactly.
And so in terms of sourcing all of these, where did you source them from?
Well, we started out and we actually sort of put a call out and said, hey, what do you have? And so we got some great things. This is actually our executive director, Jan Blackman's Barbie Dream House from 1962.
Which is a dream house.
Yeah, absolutely. It's wonderful. You can see Ken's picture over there on the makeup mirror.
Looking good, Ken.
So we had things like this. An architect built a dollhouse for his daughter in the 1970s. She's now an architect and called and said, I'd love to have this in the show. So we got some donations and loans that way. But then I did a whole lot of eBay shopping.
You did?
Again, Philadelphia sent us some of their research, and that sort of became the shopping list. So
I bet that was fun.
And it was interesting because we found things that, you know, I knew we needed erector sets and I knew we needed Lincoln Logs. There's a little tiny build a skyscraper set that it's in the show, and it comes in about a matchbox. And the little buildings are about matchsticks size, and people have just been amazed by it. So there's lots out there.
Oh, it's just so wonderful, because it does totally take me back. And just being able to see this, it just, I know plastic, there's a place for plastic, but just seeing this is just so beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and it's, again, it reflects the design style of the time. Those of us in the 60s and 70s remember a plaid couch like that, probably. So it's interesting to see how it evolves, because then you get into the, Fisher-Price dollhouse that a lot of folks had in the 70s and 80s. We purchased a new dollhouse that's a green dollhouse. So it's made of recycled materials. There's a recycling bin in the kitchen and solar panel on the roof. So again, it reflects what we've grown up with. And I think that's what people enjoy, is going back and saying, I remember that, I did that, I played with that.
And what will be lovely is in 60 years' time, somebody else will be having this saying, look at this, look at this first
this
ever
will be an
solar powered.
antique, right? Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
and they'll be looking at this just aghast.
Right.
Really, this is what it used to be like?
Exactly.
So it's called Building Toys and Toy Buildings.
Building Toys and Toy Buildings. It's at the Dallas Center for Architecture. We're right on Clyde Warren Park. And we know people are looking for things to do around Christmas, so we have some holiday hours, and our website, dallascfa.com, has all that information.
And it's free as well.
It is free.
And so now tell me about because this is not the only thing that you do.
No, and I do want to mention too that these toys are the do not touch section. There's things you can't play with, but we know it's too tempting, so we have what we call the construction zone there also. So we've got Tinker Toys and Legos and wooden blocks for people to come and play with as well.
I'm going to have to bring my son.
Absolutely.
And
you have to build something too.
Oh, I will, as he and I probably will be tackling.
Absolutely.
So it's through till January 4th.
Yes.
So tell me about the rest of the Dallas Center for Architecture, because it's a crucial part of architecture in Dallas.
Yeah, we always talk about the fact that when I was growing up, I went to the symphony, I went to art museum, so you begin to get a language of how to talk about those kind of things. We don't do that with architecture, so we're looking to sort of grab kids, but also those of us who are our age and older, teach them that there's no mystique about architecture. We live in architecture, we drive on architecture, our landscapes are architecture, and so we really want to have that conversation about why it matters to you, and give people the language. And one of the ways to do it is to get them back looking at what we're building techniques. We do walking tours of the Arts District, of course, some wonderful contemporary architecture, but we also talk about the cathedral from 1902, what Ross Avenue was in the 1890s. We do a Main Street walking tour, which gets to some of the more historic buildings as well as some of the contemporary, and so it just starts to make it accessible. We don't use jargon. We try not to use words that people automatically sort of distance from and think, that's a big word I don't understand, and just put it in layman's language.
And it just makes it accessible to everybody.
Absolutely.
You see, it's interesting when you say building architecture, we're driving on architecture, because when you're driving along, you don't even think about that.
Right. The word architecture has sort of been taken over by iconic buildings. So we think of a Frank Gehry, or we think of a Norman Foster, and that is architecture. Well, my house is architecture.
Yeah.
It may or may not have been architect designed, but it is architecture. And architecture is, and I don't love the phrase, but it's the built environment.
Right.
It's everything we've done to nature, whether it be landscape, whether it be highway. It's not just the buildings, it's the spaces between the buildings. How do buildings live with each other? How do we live in the buildings, interior, exterior? So it's a bigger conversation, and people are having it, they just don't realize they're having it.
Yeah, and I think people are having it more and more.
Absolutely.
And especially in Dallas right now. I mean, the boom here and how the Dallas skyline has changed, even in the 7 years that I've been here, has been huge.
Well, it's living styles too. So we have a lot more urban living. There's a lot more people moving downtown and living downtown. Right. Of course, Clyde Warren Park, a great connector over this freeway that's really been a boundary between uptown and downtown. So there is a lot more conversation. It's wonderful. We came into being in 2009 at about the right time. AI Dallas, the Architects chapter, founded us. And it's really a national movement. There's more and more talk going on about it. And you can find all sorts of websites that will talk about architecture and cool buildings, but again, also how we're living. Are cities walkable? Are they sustainable? Those kind of things.
Yeah, there is, and sustainable is a
Absolutely.
Is a buzzword,
Absolutely.
Isn't it, right now?
And that spins off into everything. Preservationists say that the true green building is the building that's already here. So how do you look at a building and repurpose it rather than tearing it down and having to salvage all that and then use new materials to build something else?
And do you find that Dallas is really going in that direction in terms of preserving?
Yeah, I think people are becoming a lot more conscious about it. We unfortunately have lost some buildings. We just lost a great building involved with the Cotton Exchange a couple of weeks ago. But you look downtown and a lot of the great bank buildings and some of those other offices are being transformed, and they're residences or they're new kinds of offices. So I think we're beginning to get it more and more. But again, just the conversation's important. We did an exhibition called Lost Dallas. And you know, we don't want to save every building. Some of the buildings get torn down for something else that comes along that's wonderful.
Sure.
But again, we need to be having the conversation about, okay, if that goes away, what's coming in? Because unfortunately, what we did a lot of in the 1970s was tear things down, and they're still parking lots.
I know,
So,
and that's just heartbreaking, isn't it?
It's tough.
So for somebody that's going to come to Dallas, or even people that live here in Dallas, and they really don't know much about their city, what would you say would be the key landmarks for them to go and really check out?
I think it's really interesting. We concentrate right now sort of on the urban core. So again, we do an Arts District tour, we do a Main Street tour. I think that gets you a lot of the flavor going and really starts to give you the conversation that you can then take a little bit further. We do a tour in Clyde Warren Park, or right there on the park. We do a 20-minute tour called the Skyline 360 tour.
Oh, that's great.
So you get a chance to sort of look downtown, look uptown, and gives you a flavor for, wow, I joke, and I need to stop saying this because somebody's going to take my idea, but I want t-shirts that say look up. You know, we drive around and we don't pay attention. We need to look up.
If you make them,
absolutely,
sooner rather than later.
Yes, I know. I need to. I need to.
And then you can claim it as your idea.
Exactly.
So that's I mean, 20 minutes doesn't take much time.
No, and it's great. We do one on Mondays that's at lunchtime. So we'll have office folks will sort of stumble across it and go, oh yeah, I want to learn it. And hopefully it's a teaser to get them further along. You know, one of the things about the conversation, I mentioned websites a minute ago. We try and have the conversation. So we really want it to be one-on-one. Our tour is not online. It's not an app.
Right.
You come and you take it with the guide.
Yeah.
At the same time, there really is an online conversation that goes on. So we, through Twitter and Facebook, you know, we'll connect to other people who are talking about things like this, and you know, put out some articles and say, oh, did you see this about the building in West End that's being saved, or did you see this about this cool building in the Netherlands, et cetera. It's just to get people paying attention to it.
It is. Well, I know my husband is a huge fan of the Urban Forum and everything that goes on, and so he's always telling me this is going to happen and this is going to happen.
Well, and that's what we try. We work with all of those folks. We try not to be competitors, but be collaborators.
Absolutely.
So whether it's the Dallas Architecture Forum or Preservation Dallas or others, we work with them. As a matter of fact, in January, we're doing a joint film screening of a film called Unfinished Spaces about a great national schools program in Cuba. And we're partnering with Dallas Architecture Forum, Preservation Dallas, a group called Doco Momo, and then the Latino Cultural Center, who's going to host us.
And that that looks like a really great film as well.
It's an interesting film. It's sort of the impact of government and the economy and what happens with architecture, because this is a project that started in the 60s, sort of died on the vine, and has now been rediscovered.
Yeah, and there's so much. There's so much for us all to think about and to be able to embrace and grasp and learn about.
Absolutely.
And that's what you're here for. So Greg, thank you
Absolutely.
very much.
Thank you.
And so a quick recap: building toys and toy buildings until January the 4th. And then you have many events early 2013.
Right. DallasCFA.com is our website.
Perfect. Well, Greg, thank you for being here. And
Glad to be here.
you will be joining us in the next segment also.
Look forward to it.
We will be right back.